It started with the damn laundry. Not some cinematic moment or big confession, just a sock, of all things. A dumb piece of fabric that somehow unraveled everything I'd been trying to keep under wraps. Jason and I had been roommates for 6 months. We met on a housing forum after both getting screwed over by our previous landlords. He was looking for a short-term sublet, and I needed help with rent. That was it. No deeper connection, just timing and mutual desperation. At first I thought he was straight. I mean, the guy showed up to our first meetup wearing basketball shorts, a backwards cap, and carrying a duffel that looked like it hadn't been washed since 2020. He had the kind of charm that came off as totally unbothered, like he was confident because he didn't care enough not to be. He talked fast, chewed gum like a teenager, and had this crooked grin that should have annoyed me but didn't. Somewhere between rent checks and microwave dinners, we started hanging out more than I expected. He wasn't a party guy, didn't date much, mostly stuck to the apartment, watching bad action movies, lifting weights in the living room, and complaining about his job in landscaping. "I should have been a damn plumber," he said once while elbow deep in our sink. "At least then I could charge people $200 just to look confused and hand them a bill." We got along, but it stayed on the surface. I wasn't trying to mess anything up, especially not with a guy like Jason. And then, last Friday, he did my laundry by accident. It was genuinely a mistake. He thought my clothes in the dryer were his. Easy enough. But somewhere in the load was a pair of boxers that I never meant for anyone to see. Not because they were dirty, but because they were, let's just say, specific. Black mesh, fitted, not something I bought on sale at Target. They were a birthday present to myself, okay? Maybe one day I'll feel sexy enough to wear these kind of thing. Jason didn't say anything that night. We were eating leftover Thai food and halfway through a rewatch of John Wick 2 when he paused the movie out of nowhere. "You know," he said, not looking at me, "those underwear, they're kinda hot." I stared at him, chopsticks hovering over my container. "What?" he smirked. "Just saying, if you're trying to hide that side of yourself, you're not doing a great job." My brain short-circuited. "What side?" He shrugged, casually sipping his drink. "You're gay, right? Or bi? Or something?" My mouth opened, then shut. Yeah, I am." He nodded like I'd confirmed something he already knew. Then he pressed play again like it was no big deal. But it was. At least, to me. After that night, something shifted. I caught him watching me differently. Not in a creepy way, just like he was curious. The kind of curious that makes your skin buzz. After that night, I expected things to be weird. Awkward silences, less hanging out, maybe even him spending more time outside the apartment. But Jason didn't change, at least not in the way I thought he would. If anything, he got more comfortable. He started walking around in just his towel after showers, lingering in the kitchen while I made coffee in the mornings, cracking jokes that hovered a little closer to inappropriate. One night, he plopped down on the couch next to me, still damp from a post-gym rinse, and said, "If I ever switch teams, I expect you to show me the ropes." I laughed, thinking it was just a dumb joke. But then he looked at me, really looked, and I couldn't tell if he was messing around or testing me. The thing is, Jason never gave off confusion. He didn't have the energy of a guy secretly struggling with his identity. He flirted with girls, sure, but I never saw him actually date anyone. And now he was suddenly all in my space, asking random questions like, "You ever had something happen with a friend?" Or "What's the difference between bi and pan again?" I tried to answer casually, even though my heart thumped every time our knees touched on the couch or his fingers brushed mine when he handed me the remote. I told myself it was nothing, that I was projecting. Then came the night he got a little too high. We'd ordered takeout again, our usual Friday routine, and he'd smoked a bit while we waited. Jason didn't handle weed well. He got giggly, then philosophical, then oddly affectionate. He sat closer than usual, thigh pressed against mine as we passed the soy sauce back and forth. I didn't say anything, afraid of ruining whatever this weird dynamic was. "You ever think about, what people don't say?" he asked suddenly, eyes half-lidded. I blinked. "That's vague." He laughed. No, I mean, like, what someone might be thinking, but they don't say it. Like you, for example. I turned to face him. What about me? Jason met my eyes, and for once, he didn't smile. You like me, don't you? There it was. Out in the open, like a trap I hadn't seen coming. I froze. My first instinct was to lie, laugh it off, play it cool. But something about the way he looked at me made me stop. So I told the truth. Yeah, I do. Jason didn't flinch. He just stared at me for a beat too long. Then he looked away, murmured, "I thought so," and leaned back against the couch, eyes on the TV. We didn't talk for the rest of the night, but he didn't move away either. That silence said more than anything he could have spoken. The next day was strange. Jason acted like nothing had happened. He was back to his usual self, grabbing cereal in his boxers, teasing me about my messy desk, blasting music from the bathroom while he showered. But I noticed the little things. How he'd pause when he caught me looking. How his hand would hover near mine a second longer than necessary when we passed each other in the kitchen. He didn't bring up what I said. I didn't either. But that tension, the weight of knowing, hung in the air between us, thick and warm, like humidity before a summer storm. That Sunday, it rained. One of those relentless spring downpours that made the whole apartment feel dim and lazy. I was sitting on the floor of the living room, surrounded by a bunch of old notebooks I was pretending to organize. Jason came in with a bowl of popcorn, flopped onto the couch, and dropped a pillow on my head. "Still pretending to be productive, I see," he said, grinning. I shoved the pillow off. "Some of us try to better ourselves. You're alphabetizing your doodles, dude." I rolled my eyes and kept flipping pages. He reached over and grabbed one of the notebooks, flipping through with his usual lack of boundaries. "You ever show anyone this stuff?" he asked. "Nope." "Why not?" I shrugged. "Because." Jason tilted his head, eyes still on the sketch of a guy standing alone on a rooftop. "This one's kinda sad." I looked away. "Yeah, it was a weird night." "You draw yourself like that?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "Alone?" I didn't answer. Jason closed the notebook, set it down beside him, then said, "You know, I don't think I've ever met someone like you." I looked up. "Like you're real. No filter. It's weird," he said, smiling again, but not teasing this time. Kinda nice though. My throat tightened. He set the popcorn aside and leaned back on the couch, his legs stretching out until his foot nudged my thigh. I didn't move, neither did he. I kept organizing, or pretending to. Then I felt it, his toes brushing against me again. Light, intentional. I glanced up. Jason met my eyes, and something about the way he looked at me made the room feel too small. His gaze dipped to my mouth for half a second before he caught himself and blinked away. I stood up too quickly, knocking over one of the notebooks. I'm gonna make coffee." "Cool," he said, casual again, but his voice had dropped half a register. I walked into the kitchen, hands shaking slightly. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it or if Jason was actually doing this slow, careful dance where every movement was just almost something. And then, just as I was measuring out the coffee grounds, I felt him behind me. Close. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat of his chest against my back. "Hey," he said softly. I turned halfway, my breath catching in my throat. Jason's face was unreadable, something between amused and cautious. He reached past me, grabbed a mug from the shelf above, but didn't step away. "You ever think about what it'd be like?" he asked. I frowned. "What?" "If things were different," he said. "If I were different." I couldn't tell if he was playing with me or being honest. Maybe he didn't know either. But I didn't say anything, and neither did he. He just stayed there, in that space behind me, close enough to touch, but not quite brave enough to do it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of the pipes or the distant hum of a car passing outside. I kept thinking about the way Jason had stood behind me in the kitchen, the way his breath had ghosted over my shoulder, the way he said if I were different, like he wasn't sure where he stood anymore. Or maybe he was, and I was the one still guessing. At around 1 a.m., I gave up on sleep. I got up, pulled on a hoodie, and padded out to the living room for water. Jason was already there, sitting in the dark on the couch, barefoot, hoodie unzipped over a white tee. The TV was on but muted, casting a soft blue light over the room. He didn't look surprised to see me. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. I shook my head and sat down at the other end of the couch. We sat there in silence for a while, just the flicker of the screen between us. Then he spoke, voice quiet. "I wasn't trying to mess with you earlier. In the kitchen." I turned to look at him, but he kept his eyes on the screen. "I'm not good at this, talking about feelings, or figuring out what I want." I didn't say anything, afraid I might scare him off if I did. Jason rubbed his jaw, exhaled hard. "I've never been with a guy, never even really thought about it. But the thing is," he finally turned to look at me, "when I'm around you, I do." That sentence sat between us like a bomb with a silent countdown. I swallowed. "Is this just curiosity? Or—" "It's not just curiosity," he interrupted, firm but not harsh. I stared at him, unsure what to say. He looked different in the low light, softer, almost uncertain, a version of Jason I'd never seen before. "I don't know what to do with it," he said. "I don't even know if I'm ready to do anything about it." "That's okay," I said, quieter than I meant to. "You don't have to be." Jason leaned back, his head resting against the cushion, and closed his eyes for a second. Then he looked at me again. "You've always known who you are, huh?" I nodded slowly. "More or less." He smiled, a little sad. "Must be nice." I didn't respond. Eventually he shifted, drawing one knee up onto the couch, turning toward me fully. His voice was softer now. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "When you've liked someone before, how do you know it's real? That it's not just about attention or, I don't know, the idea of them?" I exhaled, thoughtful. "Because even when they're not looking at you, you still want to be near them. Even when nothing's happening, they make everything feel a little lighter." Jason was quiet for a moment. Then, almost under his breath, he said, "Yeah, that sounds about right." My chest felt tight. I wasn't sure if I was holding my breath or if I had just forgotten how to exhale. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "I don't know where this is going. I don't even know if it can go anywhere." "It doesn't have to," I said. "We don't have to define it." Jason nodded, but he didn't move away. Instead, he reached out, slowly, carefully, and touched my knee, just a brief, quiet touch. His fingers barely rested there, but it was enough to know this wasn't a game. After that night, something cracked open between us. Jason didn't say anything the next morning. We both went about our usual routines, me making coffee, him microwaving oatmeal, and reading sports headlines on his phone. But the air was different, easier somehow. The way he handed me my mug, the way our shoulders brushed in the narrow kitchen. He didn't pull away anymore. That weekend, he asked if I wanted to go on a drive. No destination. Just out of the city for a bit. "Need a break from staring at these walls," he said. We ended up 2 hours north, on some quiet back road near a lake neither of us had ever been to. The sun was low when we parked, the water catching the last light like glass. Jason climbed up on the hood of the car, cracked open a beer, and patted the space next to him. "Come on, it's not gonna bite." I sat beside him, sipping a warm soda, watching the sky shift into pinks and purples. After a while, he asked, "You ever think about how different your life would be if you'd hidden it? Like if you never told anyone?" I glanced at him. "Yeah, but I don't think I could've. It was too much to hold inside." He nodded slowly, looking out at the lake. "I think I've been holding something in for a long time," he said. Not just about this, but a lot of stuff. Who I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to want. I didn't answer. I just let him talk. Jason looked over at me, eyes a little glassy but clear. I'm tired of pretending. There was nothing I could say to that. Nothing he needed me to say. We sat in silence for a long time, till the sun dipped below the trees and the chill started to settle in. When we got back to the apartment that night, I figured he'd go straight to his room. Maybe I would too, give us space to process whatever the hell was happening. Instead, he paused in the hallway, standing there barefoot in the dim light. I can't stop thinking about what you said, he murmured, about how you know it's real. I swallowed. Yeah? He nodded, then took a slow step forward. I want to try something. My heart stuttered. Okay. Jason looked nervous. Not scared, just unsure. Like he was trying not to break something fragile. He reached out again, this time not for my knee, but for my hand. And then, carefully, he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't perfect. It was hesitant, lips brushing mine like he was still asking permission. But it was real, and it was enough. When he pulled back, he didn't say anything right away, just looked at me like he was still catching up to himself. I don't know what this means yet, he whispered. You don't have to, I said. He gave a shaky breath, then smiled. Can we just hang out in your room, watch something dumb? No pressure? Yeah, I said, heart still racing. Yeah, we can do that. We spent the rest of the night lying side by side on my bed, watching a show we barely paid attention to, our fingers brushing, his arm eventually finding its way around my waist. He didn't try to kiss me again. He didn't need to. Somehow, just this moment, this quiet, unspoken understanding, was more intimate than anything I'd ever known. Jason stayed over that night, not just on the couch or passed out in front of the TV. In my bed, with me. Not in the hookup sense. He didn't even take his shirt off. But he was there, curled on his side, one arm draped loosely across my waist, his breath slow, and even against the back of my neck. I didn't sleep much, not because I was nervous, but because I couldn't stop thinking. Every time I felt him shift slightly or tighten his arm, my chest squeezed with something I didn't have a name for yet. In the morning, I half expected him to bolt. But he didn't. He stayed curled next to me until I moved. When I sat up, he blinked awake, looking at me like he wasn't entirely sure where he was. Then he smiled, soft, sleepy, real. We didn't talk about the kiss, not directly, but something shifted between us after that. Jason got bolder in small ways. He started leaning into me more, physically, emotionally. He'd throw his legs over mine on the couch without saying anything. He started texting me more during the day, dumb memes or things like, just saw a guy who looked like the hotter version of me, want me to fight him? But also stuff like, wish you were here, when he was stuck on a long job site in the rain. Or thinking about that night, late and unprompted. Sometimes, when he didn't think I was looking, he'd just watch me. Not in a creepy way. Just this quiet, curious kind of stare, like he was still figuring out what this was, but wasn't afraid of where it might go. And then one night, I caught him standing in my doorway. I was brushing my teeth when I saw his reflection behind me in the mirror. He had that look again, the one from the kitchen, from the lake, from the first time he touched my knee, like he was trying to figure out if he could cross a line without ruining everything. You okay? I asked, wiping my mouth. Jason shrugged, then leaned against the doorframe. Yeah, just been thinking. I waited. I keep wanting to ask you stuff, personal stuff, but then I feel like I already know the answers. I turned to face him. Then ask anyway. He hesitated. Then, what do you want this to be? My heart started thudding before I even answered. I don't need you to label anything, I said. I just want you to be honest. With yourself, with me. Jason nodded, slow. What if I don't have the words yet? Then give me everything but the words. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he stepped forward, gently took my hand, and walked me backward toward the bed, like it was the most natural thing in the world. We lay down, fully clothed. No rush, no urgency, just skin against skin under the weight of a blanket and years of walls finally crumbling. His hand found mine beneath the covers. He exhaled like it was the first time he'd let himself feel safe in a long time. "I'm scared," he whispered. "I know, but I'm also," he paused, "happy around you, like it's easier to breathe." I squeezed his hand. That night, we didn't kiss again, but he held me like he didn't want the world outside the room to exist. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't either. Weeks passed, and Jason never went back to his room. It wasn't like we had some grand declaration, no sitting across from each other over candlelight, promising things we didn't know how to keep. But he started brushing his teeth in my bathroom. His hoodie showed up in my laundry. His charger migrated to my nightstand. Quiet things, domestic things, real things. One Thursday night, I came home to find him making pasta in his socks, one AirPod in, swaying slightly to whatever song was playing. He didn't hear me come in. I just stood there for a second, watching the way he moved around the kitchen, like he belonged there, like he belonged with me. He turned and caught me looking. "What?" I shook my head, smiling. "Nothing." Jason gave me a playful squint. "You're being weird," says the man dancing to noodles. He grinned and tossed a dish towel at me. "Shut up." Later that night, we were curled up in bed, the TV low and mostly forgotten. Jason had his head resting on my chest, one leg thrown lazily over mine. He was tracing circles on my stomach with the tip of his finger, absent-minded, intimate, like he didn't even know he was doing it. He murmured, "I told my sister about you today." I blinked, heart skipping. "Yeah," he nodded. "She asked if I was seeing anyone." I said, "Yeah, a guy. You." I wasn't expecting it to hit so hard, but it did. I kissed the top of his head, fingers curling into his hair. "What'd she say?" "She said, about time." We both laughed, but mine cracked a little at the edges. Jason shifted so he was facing me, propped up on his elbow. His face was serious, but soft. "I'm still figuring stuff out," he said. "Still don't have the words for all of it." I nodded, brushing his hair back. "That's okay. But I do know this," he added, voice dropping. "I feel like myself when I'm with you. Like I don't have to try so hard." I smiled. "You never did." He leaned in then, kissing me. Deeper this time. Not nervous or questioning. It wasn't experimental anymore. It was sure. And when he pulled away, he looked me in the eye and said, "I'm not going anywhere. Just so you know." I swallowed the lump in my throat and pulled him back to me. We didn't need all the words. Not yet. Not all at once. Because the ones we had were already enough.